Plato's teachings were not only captured in his dialogues, which survive down to this day, but were also discussed extensively in the school he established in Athens, named the Academy. Some of these teachings, called Plato's untaught doctrines, are believed to be more esoteric in nature than those depicted in his dialogues, and to focus more on the metaphysical and cosmological aspects of his philosophy. It should be noted that not all the thinkers of the Academy subscribed to these doctrines, a notable exception being Aristotle, who left the Academy after Plato's death to found his own school, the Lyceum. However, those who stayed on expanded upon these untaught doctrines in early Platonism, forming a school of thought termed the Old Academy, differentiating it from the later New Academy skeptics. Although it is difficult to say for sure what these teachings were, we can glean from contemporary and later texts discussing or commenting on these Academy and its thinkers some idea. The first principle within this untaught corpus is the ideas of the one and the dyad. Drawing from Pythagorean ideas, the one represents absolute unity, whilst the dyad represents plurality. It is from these two primary entities that everything emerges. The first and most important thing that emerges from the creative pairing is numbers, specifically the decad, numbers 1 through 10. The most important of the decad is numbers 1 through 4, also called the teractes. Each of these numbers corresponds with an aspect of three-dimensional space: 1 with point, 2 with line, 3 with plane, and 4 with solid, the sum of which is the 10, the decad. Below these creations of the ideal world, the world which Plato based all his metaphysics upon, lay the world soul, or demiurge. This is an entity which emerged in his dialogues, the Timaeus. This creature in early Platonism is not evil, but merely a mediator between the ideal and the real realms, creating all material reality from 4 primary elements: air, fire, water, and earth. A passage from the Platonic second letter, probably written by one of Plato's students but attributed to Plato in antiquity, gives a hint as to this more esoteric teaching. Upon the king of all do all things turn. He is the end of all things and the cause of all good. Things of the second order turn upon the second principle, and those of the third upon the third. After Plato's death, the headship of the Academy passed to his nephew, Speusippus, apparently in line with his uncle's wishes, living from 407 to 339 BCE. Speusippus appeared to have taken his uncle's metaphysical teachings and modified them, elevating the one above the dyad. The reason that he did this was because to him, the one was the most simple and primordial, and as such the cause of all goodness and being in all things. Furthermore, the one eternally generated the many from itself, similar to the Tao of Lao Tzu, and generated the universe in an unending stream. In this elevation of the one above all else, Speusippus appears to have anticipated the Neoplatonic ideas of a much more important and later thinker, Plotinus. However, these would not again become the preeminent ideas in Platonism for another 6 centuries. Succeeding Speusippus as the head of the Academy was a man called Xenocrates. He developed an original cosmology which, instead of identifying the one as above the dyad, instead recast them as a binary pair. For him, the one was intellectual and the dyad material. The one was the father and the dyad was the mother. He divided the universe as a geocentric one with a sub- and supra-lunar aspect. Material existed here below the moon, whilst divinity and the one existed beyond the stars. Importantly, besides fleshing out a cosmology, he also attempted to turn his attention to the mind. In this universe, he posited that all thought is ideas in the mind of the one, providing a direct link between the material and the unity. In this conception of the world, we see similarities with Samkhya and Yoga and the ideas of Prakriti, Purusha, and Ishvara. After Xenocrates came a man named Palermo, who has been described as being derivative in his metaphysics, essentially borrowing from Speusippus and Xenocrates. Although this may be true, as none of his work survives intact to this day, it is somewhat unfair as this characterization fails to mention his several ethical innovations in Old Academy Platonism. Firstly, he developed the idea of autarkia, or self-sufficiency. Palermo recognized that the key to happiness was being satisfied in one's virtue and not in wealth or pleasure. He also developed the idea of oikeiosos, or conciliation, although we don't have evidence that he coined this particular term. This idea is that all things strive to live in harmony with their environment, and therefore living in harmony with nature is virtuous. Both of these ideas influenced the later Stoics, who incorporated them into their own ethical systems. With the death of Palermo, there was a turning away from a defense of Plato's untaught doctrines and a metaphysical speculation, and instead a turn towards a more skeptical form of philosophy. This was partly due to the influence of Pyrrhonian skepticism, but also due to the increasing pressure of other competing schools of thought, such as the Stoics and the Peripatetics. Despite these changes, we should remember the cosmological musings of the old Academy, as their fruits and subject would once again rise under the most influential and important school of the classical world, Neoplatonism.